Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassa. So we'll start with a bit of meditation. People regularly tell me that even with lockdown, their life is so busy, or they're not very good at meditation, or they can't meditate, or their minds are out of control. So in the beginning, it's important not to set your bar too high. Right? Even if you just have a few mindful breaths, it's already considered meditation. So start very simply, wherever you are, wherever you're sitting, just bring your attention into your body. Place your hands in your lap. It's good to sit in a relaxed, comfortable way, but also very straight and upright. Physically, we find a balance between being too relaxed, but also too tense. So our body is upright, but also relaxed. That helps our mind find that same balance. Upright, energized, but at the same time, very relaxed. Not so relaxed that we start to drift off to sleep. Maintaining that balance. So starting with your sitting position, whether you're on the floor, on a cushion, or sitting in a chair, bring your attention into your body. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath and feel the air coming into your lungs. Feel those physical sensations of the air entering your body, pausing. And as your air leaves, as you exhale, allow your body and mind to relax. So that's just one breath, but already we're meditating. If we can do one breath, surely we can do two breaths in a row. So again, establish mindfulness for a second breath, watching our bodies. Naturally, the air will flow into our bodies, pause, and then flow out. Do that for a third breath. Breathing in. Breathing out, relaxing the body and the mind. If we can do 3 breaths in a row, we're already meditating. We already know how to meditate a little bit. And this is something you can do anytime throughout the day. Anytime that maybe you're not driving a car, but sitting still, quiet, close your eyes. Just take 3 deep breaths, fully aware, air flowing into your body, flowing out. We don't have to breathe in any special or particular way, but notice where you can feel the sensations of the breath. Sometimes it's the nose, sometimes the chest, Sometimes the abdomen or solar plexus. Just notice. Notice how it changes. As you breathe in and feel the sensations of the breath, then you have body awareness. Awareness of the body. You may also be aware of the pressure, body sitting on the chair. Sensations of the arms, back, head, legs. As we pay attention to our body, become fully aware of our body in the present moment, then the sensations of the air flowing in and out of our body also become apparent. If you have thoughts, that's fine. Just recognize a thought as merely a thought. It's just merely a movement of our mind's mental energy. Whatever the thought is about, simply recognize it, see it, accept it, and come back to your breathing. Always checking, am I breathing in or am I breathing out? As we watch our breath, we also watch our mind. Whatever mood, perception, emotion is present, that too becomes an object of awareness. See it, accept it, and let it go. If we don't cling to it, it will go by itself. Coming back and checking, am I breathing in or am I breathing out? Also notice and pay attention to the silence of the mind. Even if you have thoughts, there's still part of your mind which is quiet in between thoughts. When a thought ceases, there's a moment at least of quiet. Just listen. You can appreciate the silence of our environment and also appreciate the silence within our own minds. If we only pay attention to thoughts, thoughts will never stop. But if we pay attention to the silence in our minds, the silence and quiet grows. Then even a short meditation becomes very refreshing. Temporarily, we can set down the burdens and responsibilities of our lives. Nothing we have to figure out, no problems we have to solve, nothing we have to plan. We don't have to be anybody. Nothing special, just sitting, watching, being aware, allowing the mind and body to relax. As we come to the end of the meditation, once again, notice in every detail, all the details of the air flowing in, your nose, chest, abdomen, pausing and flowing out. Fully present, slowly open your eyes. Even when the meditation ends, it doesn't really end. Simply that our eyes are open. Maybe we hear more sounds. Maybe our body moves a bit more. But the same principles apply, developing this continuity. Whether we're sitting with our eyes closed or walking meditation, every action throughout the day, being established in our awareness of our body. We're breathing all the time. Our breath is there as an object. Being aware of our surroundings, that helps us to be more clearly aware of our mind, our moods, perceptions, fears, worries. And that's where a lot of the Dhamma practice comes in. So, if you would like to chant the
Hi everyone. We'll now formally request for a Dhamma talk. Brahmacaloka Dipati Sampati Patanjaliha Divarang Hayachata Santi dasata Parajaka jadiga Dese dudama Anugampi mampaja.
figuring out the technology here. Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasam. Well, welcome everyone, and many thanks to Pitta and everyone who helped organize this talk. 2020 has been a very interesting year, continues to be a very interesting year. So we have to make adaptations as is necessary. I was not able to travel to Singapore or Malaysia or USA this year, so have to find whatever way we can in order to share the Dhamma. 2020 has been it's not been a great year for fulfilling people's expectations. It's not been a good year for getting what you want. However, it has been, in many ways, a good year for Dhamma practice. Because the truth is, all the time, the future is uncertain. And occasionally things happen in our life to make it more clear, make it obvious to us that the future is really uncertain, unreliable. All of our plans, which seem so detailed and clear and real, are revealed as being merely thoughts, mental energy. They just disappear. I, like many other people, had detailed plans in place for all the months of March, April, May, June, and onwards. And bit by bit, you just have to let go and realize future is uncertain. All these plans, they're just mental energy. And you start to realize when we don't get what we want, or when things happen that are unexpected, then we find out, how much attachment is there? And then for some people, it's very difficult. For some people, it's kind of nice, right? So it tends to bring out different things in different people, this whole experience, especially being in lockdown. For us here at Vimutti Monastery in New Zealand, I can't say we've suffered very much during lockdown. Fortunately, we have a beautiful environment. We have lots of space, very large piece of land. We had beautiful weather. We all have individual dwellings. So lockdown for us was different and unexpected, but certainly not in any way a great sense of suffering. For forest monks, often we appreciate solitude. We appreciate the time being alone. We appreciate ways to simplify our life. That's why we become forest monks in the first place, in order to look for ways to simplify our life. And everybody's life, even in the monastery, sometimes can just get busy. I think lots happening, lots of people coming. Life just gets busy in the modern age. And then what happens? Sometimes life, nature, Dhamma forces us to stop, forces us to slow down. So the silver lining, one of the many silver linings of this whole year, is that people have been forced to slow down and reevaluate, often reevaluate what is really important in life, because of nothing like a pandemic to bring up considerations of old age, sickness, and death. And solitude brings out many different qualities in different people. For many people, solitude is a punishment. Basically, solitude, or an increased time alone, puts us more direct contact with our mind, our thoughts, the results of our past karma. So for people who are uncomfortable with themselves, solitude can be a punishment. That's why they do it in prison. Considered one of the most unpleasant punishments, is simply being alone. Whereas forest monks, we love solitude. We're really grateful for it. I remember as a young monk thinking, solitary confinement in prison doesn't sound so bad, right? All this time where you got 24 hours a day just to meditate, and then they bring you your food, no one disturbs you, right? So basically, for people who are comfortable with themselves, solitude is quite pleasant, can be very pleasant. And especially if you have, if you're specifically engaging in a system of mind training, solitude is very, very helpful for developing samadhi, very helpful for developing the calmness of mind, which is an indispensable foundation for developing insight. But for some people, they also experience a lot of suffering. Because what happens is when we're very, very busy, a lot of our experiences or attachments or various traumas, big traumas or small traumas, are just swept aside, swept underneath the rug, pushed down. And as we're so busy, we keep going on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and then start to build up a bit of a reservoir. And then when we slow down, whether it's a meditation retreat or pandemic lockdown, then things can start to bubble up from our unconscious. So it can be results of old karma, can be just interactions or traumas that we've had in the past that we haven't fully resolved, and that starts to come up. All sorts of moods, emotions, defilements. Yeah, you really start to find out, you really start to learn a lot about yourself when you engage in more solitude. Now, if people don't have the tools to work with that, then it can just lead to a lot of anxiety, frustration, depression, anger, conflict, right? So you really do need to have these tools to effectively use solitude in the best way possible. When we engage in Dhamma practice, then Buddha gives us these tools. So then we realize life is short anyways. So if we have the opportunity where we are forced to slow down, forced to simplify, spend more time with ourselves, then, okay, well, how do we use the time to make the best use of this opportunity? Okay, well, let's see if we can develop Dhamma practice. So what happens is sometimes we have to be faced with some of the things that we don't normally look at. Right? There's a reason why the very first noble truth, the Buddha talked about part of dukkha. Part of dukkha is old age, sickness, and death. And he's not, when he's talking about sickness, he's not just talking about the inconvenience of getting a cold or occasional flu or a few sore muscles, but the very real possibility that at any moment we could develop some disease that is life-threatening. When we're healthy, it's easy to take health for granted. When we're healthy, especially when we're young and our body's not in pain and we feel good, we have energy, it's so easy to take that for granted. So when we're confronted with the limitations of our health, in some way we experience sickness or the possibility of sickness, then how do we relate to that? Or as we get older, for wise, we need to contemplate the possibility of death. And then you have the coronavirus statistics coming every day. How many people died? How many people died here? How many people died there? So it's a constant reminder. So this can be used in a wise way. Buddha recommended that we regularly, continuously reflect on possibility that we can die, when we can die, how easily we can die. And we find it doesn't actually lead to being depressed, but we find out how at peace we are. How at peace are we with the limitations of our life? So often what happens, many people come and talked about how the lockdown and the whole year has affected them. And some people experience a sense of fear and anxiety coming up. So, okay, well, what is it exactly that we're afraid of? Sometimes there is an unstated fear of death. Sometimes there's a fear of getting sick. Sometimes it's economic fears, whatever. The limitations of the types of worries and fears that we can create in our own mind is unlimited. So how then do you learn how to deal with fear? How do you make peace with fear? How eventually just allow fear to cease completely? Not all fear is foolish. There are some realistic dangers in the world, and the Buddha was very clear, samsara is a dangerous place. He emphasized this. There are realistic dangers, legitimate dangers in the world, right? Every time we are engaging in following our defilements of greed, desires, clingings, attachments, angers, aversions, selfishness, the delusion that tends to perpetuate our perceptions, this all has its very real danger to it. But sometimes even more obvious than that is just the danger of we don't know how long we're going to live. We don't know. People wish for safety and security, but life is inherently insecure. So how do you deal with it then? Most people, unfortunately, deal with it by trying to create a delusion of security with future plans. It's uncomfortable for most people to fully realize and accept that the future is completely uncertain. If you fully realize how uncertain, how unreliable life or samsara is, then that is a bit confronting. So people generally like to cover that over with layers of plans, thinking that we know what's going to happen in the future, planning for security, planning so that everything will be fine in the future. But if you investigate that, see, well, where is that coming from? This is not very peaceful. It's not a peaceful way to, if you're trying to meditate and you're just always thinking about the future, planning, it's not very peaceful. Where is that coming from? So even when everything is going very well, there can still be an underlying fear. There's an underlying fear of the future. So sometimes you might call it worry. Sometimes we call it insecurity. But essentially, it's fearing that something that we don't want to happen will happen. And when it comes to the future, it is infinite. The amount of things that we can possibly imagine that could go wrong, even if everything's perfect, right? Even if everything is absolutely perfect right now, still we can ruin it by, so yes, but what happens next week? We can start worrying about the future. And if that becomes a habit, that becomes habitual, then there'll be no moment where we can truly be at peace and enjoy life. Right? We'll never really be at peace. Always be worrying about the future. Now, the wise way of recognizing the dangers in samsara is that, yes, if everything's perfect, let's say everything at this moment is absolutely perfect. And the wise danger, the legitimate danger, is that it won't last. Yes, of course, it won't last. You can't hold on to it. We can't, no matter how good things are, we can't hold on to it. It's going to change. No matter how nice a situation we have, we will eventually lose it. No matter how nice the people are around us, eventually we'll be separated from them. Right? So this is a wise way of recognizing the true dangers. Future is impermanent. Future is uncertain. So then the result is very different. Instead of being full of worry, fear, anxiety, then if we begin to have some insight into the nature of life and how it flows and how it cannot be held on to, how it's constantly changing, how it's very uncertain, very unreliable, then start to make peace with that. So this is the nature of the way things are. Can I be at peace with that? We can either fight it or we can be at peace with it. If we fight it, then we can add layers of perceptions and try to deny it and live in denial and repression and layers of delusion. That doesn't really lead to happiness. But if we are able to recognize it, make peace with it, and even if there are legitimate things that could go bad in the future, right? I mean, life is sometimes, it's not always pleasant. There could be real things that could go wrong in life. But how do we live in a way that we're not just living in fear the whole time? We're not just living with a constant state of anxiety of all the things that might go wrong, right? I remember in Thailand, we would often have to work with developing a sense of fearlessness, how to be fearless, and placing ourselves in situations where fear might come up, and how to be at peace with that. I found that if I was going to be thinking of things that might go wrong, then how could I overcome fear? One way that worked for me was simply to say, even if the worst case scenario happened, could I be at peace with that? Could I accept that? Because that's how fear has power over us. And if we just accept, oh, even if that happens, I will be able to carry on. I will be able somehow, it may not be what I want, but I will somehow be able to carry on and I will be okay. And once you get to that state, then the fear loses power. It doesn't have the ability to control our minds anymore. It's only when we are fighting some future possibility, that the fear holds sway over our minds. Otherwise, the majority of what we do in life can actually just be coming from fear. The decisions we make, worrying about what other people think, worrying about not having enough in the future. How much of life and the decisions we make just comes from fear or worry or insecurity? So that just robs us of joy. Even when things are relatively fine, and even when things are not pleasant, you can still be at peace with that. Even when we never always get what we want. You can still be at peace with that. Even when things are uncomfortable, too hot, too cold, not comfortable, even when we're sick, still be at peace with that. So even in the midst of a year where generally people are not getting what they want, there's still a lot to be grateful for, right? And this is sometimes easily overlooked. When it's easy to look at the things that are going wrong in life, right? It's so easy. It can become a habit where we're just looking at, this is not right. I wish this was different. This person's not right, right? Then it becomes a habit. So sometimes you just have to force the mind to look at the things that are also there that often we overlook. Say, oh, I'm very fortunate in this area. I'm very fortunate in this area. Oh, I'm very fortunate here. Do we have a roof over our heads? Yes. Okay, we'd be grateful for that. Do we have some people around us who like us? Say, okay, we'd be grateful for that. Do we have enough food on the table? Are we starving? We're not starving. Okay, well, be grateful for that. So there is so much to be grateful for. And then that changes the whole attitude towards life. And fear and gratitude cannot coexist, right? There's another way to overcome fear is simply by replacing it with a wholesome state of mind. Understanding fear, it loses its power, but also just replacing it with a wholesome state of mind, such as gratitude. I remember once when I was in Thailand, I was still a young monk, but I was on Tudong, and I was staying at Red Cliff Mountain Monastery. And at that time, one of the great Buddhist masters, he was a disciple of Ajahn Mahabua, was Lumpu Li, Ajahn Li. And I was new to the monastery and still relatively young as a monk, and on Tudong and at this kind of, it's one of the best monasteries in Thailand, best forest monasteries, very high standard. And I had newly arrived and was walking around and exploring the paths. I didn't really know which paths led where, so I was kind of walking around. And then I came upon, without knowing, I walked right up to the path that led to Lumpur Li's kuti. So this great meditation master who was reputed to be a fully enlightened arahant. And as I walked up to his kuti, I saw him out front. He was sitting in the swept area in front on the ground, just hunched, and he was working on something. He had a machete and some wood and was working and carving stuff. And so since I was there anyways, I just walked up and respectfully, also crouched down and kind of innocently said, "Oh, Lumpu, what are you doing?" Which, if I had known better at the time, I probably would have, just not impinged on his space. But I went up to him and said, "Lumpu, what are you doing?" Because he seemed very friendly and welcoming and calm. And he said, "Oh, I'm making some toothwoods for my teacher." So Lumpu at this time was in his 70s. He was in his 70s, already himself a great master. And making these toothwoods are basically wooden toothbrushes that are made from a specific astringent vine. And we typically, especially as young monks, we will carve them and offer them as sets to various teachers or respected ajahns. But it's usually something that the junior ones do. And so I came upon Lumpu and he's making toothwoods for his teacher, even at age about 75. And again, innocently, I said, "Well, can I help you out?" and he said, "Thank you very much. No, as a Westerner, I didn't know. I'm not very good at using a machete to carve." He was much better at it than I was. but still, I was so moved and touched that that sense of gratitude was so strong. Even as a fully enlightened arhat, he would still think of what can I offer my teacher, right? The sense of gratitude for the teachings that he had received, the Dhamma that he had received. It was just so strong. So I think, well, then it helped me reflect on my own life. How many wonderful things in my own life, that I overlook or take for granted. So the sense of gratitude then becomes stronger and stronger as you understand the Dhamma and make peace with life. But not all fear is foolish. Right? There are sometimes that fear actually is quite useful and justified, and a wise response to legitimate dangers. And this is where the Buddha encourages us to reflect on the uncertainty of the future. Reflect on, we don't know how long we're going to live. What is it that we truly want? How are we spending our time? One day, one night, it goes so quickly. As we get older, it seems like 1 year goes quickly. 10 years goes quickly. So how are we spending our time? The fact that we are alive, we have the opportunity to practice the Dhamma, we have everything we need. We have everything we need to be happy, and we have everything we need to thrive in the Dhamma. We have teachings. If you have a healthy body, if you have some time, you don't have to be in retreat all the time to benefit from the Dhamma. But if you have some time and some energy, and you're still alive, and you have access to the teachings, I mean, we live in an unprecedented time. It's so easy to receive teachings through, if not through a book, then through Zoom. There's always some way that we have access to teachings, and then, well, it's a very valuable opportunity, but like so many valuable opportunities, we can easily overlook that, take it for granted, not make the most out of the time that we have. So we think, yeah, the fact that life is uncertain and we don't know how long we're going to live, certainly our time is limited, then that helps us to clarify our priorities in life. What is truly important, so that we spend time doing the things which are most important and not overly concerned with things that are not really important. And what's really, everyone has to make those decisions for themselves, and what's very important, what's most important. But I would say certainly Dhamma practice has got to be up there. And that wish for security, that longing for security or safety, the wise response to that is not anxiety and worrying and trying to control everything, manage a life so that we'll never experience any unpleasantness. That's just a burden. And when we see that nothing really can be held on to, then what do we do with that longing for security? And that's where we can turn in. That's where we look for the security of the Dhamma. Why is it that we talk about the three refuges? What's a refuge? A refuge is a place of safety. It's a place of true safety. Take refuge in the Buddha. We're taking refuge in the potential of all of us to be free of defilements, to realize the same insights and wisdom that the Buddha experienced. So that's a place of true safety. And if you take refuge in the Dhamma, you're taking refuge in these natural truths. Refuge in the Sangha, those individuals who have realized or seen these truths and are living these truths. If you take refuge in things which are actually secure and reliable, then no matter what happens, we're going to be okay. Whether we get what we want or we don't get what we want, we're going to be okay, because that's our refuge is not in the material world. Right? Whether we're always surrounded by people we love or not, right? So then our refuge is not in other people, but our refuge is in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So in this way, we actually have the ability to completely overcome fear. This is the wise way to relate to the legitimate dangers in the world and in samsara. Okay, there's so much more to talk about, but I also want to leave enough time for questions. So for now, I'll offer this for your reflection and then open it up for questions.
Thank you, Ajahn. Let's all say 3 sadhus together. Andamayam o vadakatha sadhu karang kadamase. Sadhu, 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 anumo